Hello and welcome to Note to File, a clinical research podcast.
A collection of interviews, candid commentary, and general nonsense for the clinical research community.
Check us out at notetofilepodcast.com.
And now, without further ado, on to the show.
All right, guys, welcome to another Note to File Live. Today is November 11th. I believe it's Veterans Day. Is that correct?
It is Veterans Day. A happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there.
Indeed. Thank you all. Let's welcome our guest this week. Good friend of ours, one of my favorite people in the industry. And I'm not just saying that because he's standing there in the middle of us. Steve Wimmer. Steve, how's it going, man?
Oh, it's a frigid day here in Orlando, Florida.
I doubt that's true.
What's frigid? What's frigid in Orlando?
So the first day of the year that everyone busts out their Uggs is the first day where you wake up and it's below 70. But we got down below 40 last night, and people start to freak out. They get a little antsy.
Do the iguanas fall from the trees? Is that when that happens?
They do that. It's more prevalent in South Florida, but yeah. Other than that, doing great. Conference season is over until Scope, and so I'm trying to get reacquainted with my family.
Yeah, fair. They're still there. That's good. Step one. Yeah, I know. I wanted to ask about that. I know, you were out on the road doing your thing. I went to a few conferences myself. I was happy to see you at a couple and be able to catch up. Always awesome to actually see the people that you like in person. I don't know. What'd you see out there, man? I know you like to do, kind of posts about your observations from the conferences, and I think people find those insightful and funny. So what'd you see? What are you seeing?
Yeah. So I really appreciate when people take risks. I know that at the first SOS, you guys had like that debate panel, which was pretty new at the time. So I saw a few sessions that were at least attempting to provide something other than a 30-minute infomercial, which is really great, especially at Research Revolution. They had a whole track that was like dialogue and debate. That was pretty cool. In terms of content, like, I don't know. We kind of have devolved into a lot of sameness. We're trying to kind of generate new opinions on the same issues, and I don't know, it's fine. Like, we collectively are making progress, I think, across like most things. It just feels slow and it's gross. Of course, like everyone's talking about AI. I think the thing that bugged me isn't the existence of AI. I posted on this and then kind of got like a little like, hey man, we have some AI stuff from our CEO, like, but it's more that like, if everyone's doing it, like, it's not really that noteworthy. Like, let's change the conversation to like the delivery and like what it's doing, rather than just slapping like a very shiny, sparkly AI sticker on your booth. Yeah,
that's something. I mean, Denali, you've talked about. I mean, AI is not really
Everyone's using AI. It's not
the
special.
Solution.
It's a tool.
It's a feature. It's a part of the solution. What you shouldn't you be selling like the solution, not the. It's like you've made the same analogy, and I'm just going to upstage you and steal it and pretend like I did it. I came up with that on my own. You're not like, we use the internet to run ads. Like, the internet is not using the internet is not part of the feature, right? Like, no one gives a shit like about how you get it done necessarily.
It's like, we're digital. We use computers. It's like, well, no shit. You use computers. Like, everyone does. And I feel like AI is going to be that. Like, yes, it's odd. It's the newer thing, but everyone uses it. And I think there are a subset of folks who are actually like writing and like developing their own AI. That is so very different than using AI. And I think they get conflated, and everyone's like, we're doing AI. And it's like, no, you're using Gemini, you're using your chat GPT, like, you're using it, which is cool, and you should be, because that's the world we live in right now. But I think it gets conflated to like people actually developing AI. It's like, you should be doing it. But again, it's the tool, not the solution. Focus on what you're actually providing, not how you're doing it. That doesn't matter to the end users.
Yeah, I heard a guy at CNS well, I heard a guy. I was talking to a guy, and he was saying, like, in his view, it's basically going to become a commodity. Like, it almost has to. You turn it on the way you turn on the water or electricity. Like, you plug into it, and so he was making the point, like, all right, the question then is, if you can just turn on intelligence and apply intelligence to something, how do you apply that intelligence and to what are the bigger questions, which I think we all probably agree are the biggest questions. I'm just not the person to answer it. I'll just keep posting memes.
Well, I think half the
Fair.
people who talk about it shouldn't be talking about it either. So
Yeah, I mean, I certainly shouldn't be talking about it. I know
never stops
nothing
you.
about- I don't know. No. If I've no hubris whatsoever, so or shame. So there you go. But yeah, so I mean, and okay, so let's go backwards a little bit. I mean, I think we can probably agree. Dude, you're the most dad I've ever met in my life, and I love it. So good job, Papa Steve. AI certainly has a role in the patient recruitment space. I think that's not going out on a limb to say that. What do you think? What can't it fix though? Like, what are some things that, like, maybe we're overlooking that, like, we don't need to be plugging AI in, especially in their patient recruitment space? Like, what are old school solutions that we need to sort of just embrace versus trying to slap AI onto something? Is there anything that jumps out?
Yeah, I'm going to think of this like backwards. Like, so fix is tough. I'm going to qualify my entire response under the umbrella of improve rather than like fix. And I think anything that requires manual labor, anything that requires a lot of input can be improved. So there's a lot of people talking about AI agents for calling. I think we're probably there. Like, it's the sort of thing where if you know you're talking to an AI agent and you agree, like, okay, fine, it's fine. If you get tricked into it and you think you're talking to a person and find out you're talking to an AI agent, that's going to suck for a lot of people. But going through medical records and finding the needles in the haystack and then activating them. We talked about this before, and kind of like my entire bent is like, if you're going from, I think this person's qualified because I looked at their medical records, now I have to find out if they're interested, versus I'm running ads, people are raising their hands saying I'm interested, and now we have to do the work of qualifying them. I'll take the interested people because they're harder to find in my view, depending on the TA. So I think AI can solve a lot of that manual work of sifting through all the qualified disinterested people to get the interested ones to the top of the pile and then in front of a person to talk to. What I don't think AI could solve is people who are reticent or maybe distrustful. Like, I don't think throwing a chatbot or an AI agent in front of someone who's already skeptical is going to move the needle much. Where a relationship with someone at the site, like if you were at a health fair or whatever, just state fair over some corn dogs and funnel cakes in Oklahoma, and people are like, clinical trials, man, like what they think and the reality of clinical trials are probably so far apart. Over a conversation, you could close that gap, and I just don't think people would even be interested in hearing that from Johnny Robot.
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, this is something where, after a lot of sort of deliberation, I'm going to try is like seeing if the AI calls can be effective or how it's taken. I mean, is there any, I don't know if that's something you guys do or not, or if like you've seen or heard like what the general reaction is. I mean, I know, I've talked to enough people on the phone in Oklahoma that I'm like, I feel like if they catch on that they're talking to AI, it could go poorly potentially. But I don't know that that's true. That's just an assumption I'm making. Is that something you guys have seen or have any like data? Is there data on that? Like that people are like, yes, I want to talk to AI about my clinical trial or medical history. I mean, these are not, these are not necessarily surface level conversations being had, right?
I mean,
Yeah.
do you think it depends on like the channel this person came into? So you mentioned the two of them, right? Like people who are self-select and are interested and need to have a conversation versus people who are having like cold outreach because we found that they might be eligible. Because I feel like there'd be a difference in reception there.
Yeah, and in terms of data, I don't know. I tend to think of it like just practically, like, can I tell myself a story about someone who responded to an ad at 11:30 at night, and they got a text that said, "Hey, at some point you're gonna have to have a longer conversation to answer some more questions. You could do that now with an AI agent, and if anything goes wrong, you can connect with someone during business hours, or you can wait and have someone call you." Like, I think that's really easy, and I think a lot of people would already select, like, number one. We did get a comment: AI cannot detect the subtle doubt or read the fear between the lines that a human can pick up on, from Daniel Perez, who is one of the GOATs. Thank you, Daniel. I agree, probably not, but how far away is that, right? Like, I mean, how many thousands of conversations would you need to have before you could train an AI on waivers and voice? Like, there's already companies that are using vocal tonality to predict like infection, or they're listening to people's conversation over the long term with kind of an ambient, always on agent in the house to see if they can predict neurodegenerative disease onset. So like, yeah, not here now, but anytime our objection is like, well, that's science fiction, like, not too long till it's science fact. I think for me, it's more about what people are comfortable with. I had that goofy post a while back about going through the Wendy's drive-through and using their AI, but I think like the root of that and what I see is that people will become more and more okay with it as it becomes ubiquitous and they're forced to use it. And then once kind of we cross the gap of like most people are fine with it, then it should be a tool in the tool belt like anything else. And if people are given the option to opt out, I have a hard time believing it's going to like set us back 50 years or destroy medical trust. Like, we're already at an all-time low institutionally. So.
Well, I think we're all like from a similar-ish generation, right? Where we grew up and the internet was new. We were all alive and cognizant before internet was a thing. We came up with the internet. There was a period of time where it was like, you can't trust it. It's on the like that was just on the internet. Like, don't trust it. Don't trust the internet. Like, when you have to do your research, you have to go to the encyclopedia. Like, anything can be on the internet. And now that's literally like the source of truth. So we've seen that, like we talked about like internet and computers, like we've lived that.
I'm only 24 years old, so I'm not sure yet.
Oh, my mistake.
That's so good though. Yeah. Like, oh, you got that from the internet. That used to be like a punchline, and it immediately disqualified whatever you said. And now if you can't find it on the internet, like, show me a source, like show me where you found that. And if it's not on the internet, like, is it real? I don't know. Like, the exact 180 has happened. So
you mean you don't have a set of encyclopedias just sitting there that you have to go do your research for?
My dad probably still does this at his house, but
from like 1973.
I think the problem is there's going to be a counterpoint to every point that seems realistic and valid, because the way people are spreading mis and disinformation is now like coded and softened, and the edges are blurred between reality and opinion, or fact and opinion. I know you were talking about facts and opinions in the last one.
A fact is anything you can prove. An opinion is something you feel and believe, but you cannot prove.
Yeah. We can talk about the underlying metaphysical assumption in those definitions, but
it also involved robots, so don't get too deep on me, Steve.
Yeah. All that to say, I don't think there's a lot that couldn't benefit from a thoughtful application of AI in patient recruitment. So I'll say we currently use it not to interact with patients in an agentic way, but thinking through like our funnels and looking for areas for improvement. So there's a lot of analytics. And then on the creative side, remember when ChatGPT first came out and everyone was like, well, get ready if you're a pencil pushing accountant to lose your job. But who's safe? The creatives. And then like the next 18 months, basically everything that came out was just creative. And now people are making commercials and movies. And songs, like, right, there are AI bands that are topping Spotify. Like, it's
Mhm.
the exact opposite of what we thought would happen. And for us, like, we're saying, all right, if we can iterate really broadly and really quickly, that's like fuel for digital marketing. If you can have a bunch of things that are like systematically different from one another, you're going to see really quickly what messages are resonating, what images, like what platforms. And so it's allowed us to go a lot broader, faster, in terms of trying to figure out like what's going to get in front of a patient and pique their interest enough to even stop the scroll and consider.
What are you seeing?
Yeah.
You seeing any, like, specific trends or platforms, or is that like proprietary and I shouldn't ask that?
No. So I think video generation, generative video is there. It's fine. Like, and it does not dissuade people. So we, for a long time, didn't do a ton with YouTube because it's just so hard to make video well and cheaply and quickly. And now, like, YouTube is kind of like probably third place for us behind TikTok and Meta. So I would say generative video is like really powerful. I think in terms of images, nothing really. I can check with our team and report back. But I know 6 months ago we were seeing like generative AI images were way outperforming like stock photography or just vector. I know like vector art for a long time was like kind of the gold standard for us, and it got replaced. But I think that's the thing where it's like novelty. Like anytime you say a best practice in marketing, as soon as someone reads that blog post, it's no longer the best practice because everyone's doing it. Same in
Yeah.
sales. It's the reason
Yep.
we get the same cold emails and the same cold LinkedIn because someone bought a course or whatever, or responded like template on LinkedIn.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I got to incorporate more of that in my LinkedIn posting. I've made this is something I know that you and I have talked about since as far back as I think maybe the first SOS, but like I made a poll on LinkedIn about sites and whether they value chart review versus advertising. And overwhelmingly chart review won, actually kind of to my surprise. Do you think, or do you, in your experience, do sites still have a sort of negative connotation that comes with advertising?
I don't think so. Caveat, they're running their own ads. Like, no one's gonna like dump on Margaret down the hall, who's their marketing person and is trying really hard, and they're like, Margaret, you suck. I think there is still like general ambivalence towards centralized campaigns, although
Yeah.
it feels like at the site level that's shifting pretty substantially. This is probably chalk one up for capitalism, honestly. Like, enough companies have come into the scene in the last 5 or 10 years that have understood without site buy-in, the product of centralized recruitment campaigns are worthless. And so they've kind of stood on the shoulders of the Acurians of the world who were like, here's a million names, go call them.
Right.
And said like, hey, maybe here's 10 names, but they're really good. We already called them for you. So in that sense, like, I think sites are okay with it. Where I think there's probably a big delta is like, if you are not good at running digital advertisements, or you are not good at operationalizing the leads that those advertisements generate, then you're going to have a pretty poor view of that tactic for enrolling your studies. And so if you've spent 15 years developing a really good process and you've got internal people who know their stuff, and it's not Margaret from accounting, it's Margaret the recruiter, and recruiter means I just call people all day through the records and she's got a system, like, then that's going to produce better results than trying to figure out Facebook on the fly when you don't have the tools. You're putting like bad ads out in the field. And more important than the ads is the ability to operationalize that interest. Like, a list of names still really means nothing. So that rambling response comes down to sites probably are most excited about the process that works for them. I think those who are kind of short selling advertising probably have a either a really good process around chart review or a pretty poor process around advertising, and that's kind of
and I guess and that kind of, I mean, I guess leads to my next question. Do you, in your experience, like, are sites well set up for, you know, dealing with advertising? In my experience, I've worked on studies where we've done very well with advertising, and we've been privy to, you know, other sites' metrics in terms of, you know, outreach and time to outreach, and whether they got people in for screening. And frankly, I was shocked by like how poor most sites do, you know, waiting 5 days like to reach out for the first time, or never doing it for that matter. Do you think many sites simply aren't set up like to do that effectively, or do they not value? I mean, I feel like there's something there. I don't know exactly what it is, but I've seen it time and time again. And when I've been able to get some insight into some of the, you know, metrics when on these central campaigns.
Yeah. So there is going to be like a major gap in process and resourcing between, you know, a site that's part of a 50 site network that's PE backed, and an independent research site, but that's been around for 15 years versus someone who's just trying to get off the ground. So I think that is the problem, not necessarily that sites unilaterally don't have it or don't have it together, but you can't know how effective they're going to be until you try. And realizing that a lot of it is process is something that I think people are still missing. They think like, oh, if we have this central campaign referring into all these sites, like, then it's going to have a similar outcome. And like, that's so far from the truth. And we see a lot of like, oh, this site's struggling, like they need more referrals. And we're like, actually, they're struggling because they're really bad at activating referrals. They need less referrals, and maybe zero. And you should resource them in another way, like help them get to their own patients, because they're just not like set up to activate folks. Like you said, like waiting 5 days, there is a pretty big difference between someone who's expecting you to reach out and someone who's not. So activating someone off of medical records and they're not expecting a call is a different animal than someone who filled out a form last night. I will say though, that like some of that can be overblown. Like there is definitely correlation between outreach time and whether that person is likely to ever show up in a trial. But I mean, I've had a couple of experiences enrolling in trials as a patient where it took them 2 or 3 weeks to get in touch with me. And maybe I'm an odd duck. Like I always feel bad. Like I'm like, oh, they're doing their job and I'm not doing my job by picking up the phone for them. But I think depending on how interested someone is, like if their interest is beyond a certain threshold, they're not going to like literally goldfish it and forget 6 seconds later. Like they'll remember. But that comes down to how interested they really were when they clicked. And that's going to be all over the spectrum.
I think I've seen data that's like completely conflicting. Some people like it absolutely matters. You need to call within 30 minutes. And this is like the retention rates. And then you see other people who've reported data where it's like, it doesn't matter. They'll enroll if they're actually interested.
Yeah. There's lies, damned lies, and statistics, right? So I think you can probably slice with a big enough data set it anyway to say anything. I think Paul Ibsen is the one who I remember posting something where he like looked at a big chunk of data and was like, actually, it doesn't matter. Like call them whenever you want. Yeah. And I think there's probably enough noise that you can't, I would be hesitant to say that. Like it just makes sense on the surface. Like if I filled out a form and got called the next day versus 2 weeks later versus a minute later after filling the form, like at scale, those have to have different outcomes, it seems. But if it's a trial for like a rare pediatric disease and this is my only shot, and they wait 2 weeks to call me, like I'm taking the call. So that's what I mean. Like there's just so much noise. I think there's broadly like managed conditions that are chronic versus life-threatening or like super rare or oncology. Like there's just, you can't treat them the same.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Well, it's interesting. So I like going back to like the site type thing, because like back in my career, I've worked at recruitment companies as well. And I think it does really come down to like, Steve, to your point, like the site type and what they're set up to do. Because I think sometimes like you have folks in AMCs who are focused on like the clinical side of care. And all of a sudden, like, you have these coordinators being tasked for recruitment. Well, that's not their skill set. Recruiting and selling patients, for lack of a better way of explaining it, like selling them on the trial, say like, hey, this is a thing we should get you to do. That's very different than being like on a care team and like providing cares to someone. So you're looking at like wildly different skill sets. And I think depending on the site and the motivations that you have, like AMCs were always, I don't know if your experience was, it was really hard to work with AMCs from a recruitment perspective because they did not really care about that. They were not set up for it. They were set up to run the research, not like the business side of things. Maybe now it's different. Things are changing because their funding models are changing. But like those are always a struggle to work with. And you think major research hubs, they're going to have this on lock. And you're like, oh no, this is a nightmare. So it's like, I think the site type and like what incentivizes them and what they're actually good at really, from what I've seen, impacts how they handle central recruitment campaigns.
1,000% yes. And I think I'll just agree across the board that AMC's, like, because their commercial model is largely not around getting as many patients through the door as possible and hitting, their revenue numbers by enrolling, they are fundamentally not set up to have great processes around receiving referrals from outside their system.
Yeah.
So, that's been a challenge, and it is almost a new conversation every time we work with someone. So like we've worked with, I could just off the top of my head, Northwestern on like 3 different studies, but because there were 3 different TAs, it was 3 different processes, and like one clinical coordinator like really preferred like, hey, just send me a digest email once a day with like, here's who, and then the other one was like, text me, just text my phone. And I'm like, text your phone? Like, so yeah, it's I think the companies in the space, like the recruitment and referral space, that do well are going to be the ones that can see that you have to be really, really flexible and adapt to the site's needs. Have a process that's malleable enough to text the phone at Northwestern, but send an email to Harvard, and then just let the people at Hightower Clinical log into the portal because they know WTF is up.
Something like that. So, I mean, if you are a site, like what metrics should you be like obsessing over, like in terms of patient recruitment? I think this is an interesting, like, again, something we're trying to sort of build and evolve for us. And, we're relatively small, but we're sort of like what metrics should we really be giving the most attention to?
I mean, I think I would split this up in terms of your own sourcing and then folks that are being kind of handed to you on a platter. Like if I was sourcing patients, I would want to know what channels were producing the most volume. And then I would want to understand how much money I was putting into those channels, and then do some quick math on, is this ROI positive? Like, are we generating 100 people for the database and then they never like show up to screen, versus maybe a low volume, high touch channel? Does it work to send someone to a health fair and like get like 2 or 3 people who are really interested, but they're going to come in on Monday, versus running ads for a weekend and you're not sure how to really turn those clicks into enrolled patients? And it might be study by study. So I would want to understand both the throughput metrics and then the cost metrics for any channels where I was investing not just money, but time at the site level. For how you're handling referrals, I think the big one is just contact percentage. So what percentage of the people who are referred into you do you get in touch with? And ask the person you're working with, like, hey, is that normal? Like, they have a dashboard. We have a dashboard by site, by study, and we can say, like, across the board for this study, it's actually 50%. So you're only getting in touch with about a quarter of them. That could be a process issue for you guys.
Yeah.
And
how transparent? I mean, it sounds like you guys are pretty transparent. I don't know that that's always been the case with other central recruiter, or even who the hell to talk to about that. So that's interesting to know, and maybe.
I mean, we have a dedicated resource like on every study whose job it is to be friends with the sites and help them if they want help. It's very important they don't feel like the cops. They really do need to feel like a resource, not like,
They don't email you every day they don't email you every day and say, did you update the platform? Did you update the platform?
We would love to do that, but because it doesn't work and makes enemies not friends, we don't do it. And the updating the platform thing, like it's tough for us to know what's going on because that's our only window into your world. So it sucks for you because you're updating another platform with the same information. So putting it in twice sucks. Like until there's just top to bottom tech integration, like some of this stuff's going to be annoying. But I will say, if you're working with a recruitment company and you're like actually curious, like, hey, is it going normal for us or worse or better? Like they will tell you, because if they're worth their salt at all, like they want you to perform. That's how their commercial model works, is by you being that last mile delivery. Like you're essentially UPS to our Amazon. No, terrible. Amazon has their own delivery now, I guess, so it doesn't matter. But that analogy would have worked in 2011.
We'll pretend like it's 2011.
So yeah, they would. I think, like, if they didn't tell you, that would be shocking to me. And then the other piece I would want to know, and this is like a bargaining chip for you, is like, what's the screen fail ratio of these referred patients versus the ones that are coming from, our sources? I can say, like, we track that really closely because it's sometimes in our SLA with the sponsor that we need to be at parity. If we're sending in screen fails outside of like the study norm, sometimes we like owe money back for that. So we track it really closely. And if you're, curious, like, you can ask, but I would track that.
Yeah. And then, sorry to keep sort of interjecting randomly, but like this is interesting and something I don't know that much about, but like what's like the final success metric for you? I mean, is it randomized patient? Is it referred patient? Is it screened patient? Like, how does that generally work at that level? It's always been sort of something I've been curious about, because it seems like a weirdly a model that sort of lends itself to maybe being manipulated, because like you can throw a shitload of patients at a site. So look, we did it. We gave them 100 patients, and it can be 100 crappy patients. Or, sort of in the same vein, but not like, you could be giving us great patients, but the site has no follow through, does a terrible job. Or you could be sending patients and they all screen fail. Like, how is success truly like measured? Because I feel like there's so many caveats there, so to speak.
Yeah. So sort of a nuanced answer, but your initial guess is right. Like, randomized patient is as far as we can take it. We are not an engagement company per se. Like, I think there's some things you can do on the front end, and we have people who are talking to these patients before we send them to your site. So sometimes we can continue that engagement if it's helpful. But a lot of times the relationships at the site level are more important than the phone screener that you talked to like 3 months ago. So depending on site resourcing, it's better to have you guys keep that going on. So that being said, like, randomized patient is the very last thing that we find out. So there's a lot of funnel before that. Sometimes, depending on run-ins and screening periods and how quick you can activate people, it might be 60 or 90 days before we find out if a patient randomizes. So what we're trying to do is reverse engineer that journey and figure out how quickly can we have meaningful data at each step. So the very first thing we're going to find out is like click-through rate on impressions and submission rate on a screening form online. And so we're trying to establish really quickly, are those healthy or not? Then eventually we're going to see like how many people who come through and fill out that form and then are pre-qualified are picking up the phone. And that varies by TA too. Like you're going to see a lot more people picking up the phone for something that has a high disease burden than something where they're just kind of kicking the tires. Like, oh, it's a mild asthma study. Like, it's going to be a lower pickup rate than, someone who's dealing with like severe alopecia. And then just down the funnel. So the final metric is, of course, randomizations. We are tracking a lot of important stuff along the way to make sure that we don't have to wait until, randomizations either is or isn't good. We're trying to build like smoke detectors so that there's no good fire.
Makes sense. Something I had a question about, you kind of mentioned in thinking about like, how do you navigate the sponsor to site component of it? Because like you're going at this on the protocol level, I'm assuming, correct? Like you contract with a sponsor to support recruitment for their trials, and you work with the sites. And we live in a space. Is that accurate? That's a general assumption. Okay, so like
for the most part, yeah.
Right. And so like how do you guys navigate then, and again, vendor, partner, whatever term you want to put on how you're operating in that model, but how do you navigate the purchaser and the user being two different groups, and like how do you sit in between that? Like how do you navigate? Because I've been in relationships where like they don't want that person involved, they want it to go through the sponsor. Like how do you navigate that dynamic between like vendor, sponsor, site? What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah. So vendor, I know there's been a lot of conversation, vendor, partner. We prefer
Is one in health
betrothed.
a vendor or a partner?
Yeah. We go with betrothed. So
Perfect.
Yeah. It's in all our service level agreements. So I think there's like the subjective, like relational stuff, which really all just falls under the umbrella of like, don't be a dick and be helpful. And then some more objective stuff. So like we assign someone to every study who is kind of our liaison. We just call them site coordinators. We try to attend IMs at the beginning of a study to build some relational capital at the site level, explain like, hey, you might have worked with a company like ours, and if you have in the past and you had a problem with it, it was probably one of these three things. And here's what we're doing differently so that those things don't annoy you this time around. A simple one is like communications, right? Brad, I see you kind of like griping about this online. Like you're getting emails from like 5 different people across 6 different organizations, and that's very annoying. So we have a like we can email you once per week, and that's it. And if for some reason we need to communicate outside of that, like it's coming through the main point of contact at the CRO, or the sponsor, who is like your person. So you might get 1 email a week, but outside of that, like we're not going to blow up your inbox. If you reach out to us, that's fine. Like we'll pick up the phone or answer your email, but we're not going to beat down your door. The other part is like kind of having an open-handed approach. So we will generally say like, hey, we would love to serve you in this way. In the past, like sites that have used our support have done better than their peers on a study, but we understand everyone has their own process and maybe you want to work through their own patients first. Like that's fine. Let us know and we'll help. And I think just knowing that we'd be open to not forcing ourselves on them, I think sometimes like turns the tide of like emotional willingness. And Brad, like you mentioned just a second ago, like it's ripe for manipulation, and that's true. And there's no other way to just say like trust us, because we could absolutely spam terrible referrals and be like, no, screen them. And then we wake up and our screen fill rate's like 93%, study average is 20%. That of course is like a terrible business practice. Like we're never gonna win another contract with that sponsor again. But one of the ways we try to avoid that, and we'll tell the sites this too, is like, hey, we're only contracted for like 20 ICFs to start. There's a cap. And to go beyond that, we have to get authorization to proceed. And so they're going to be evaluating the quality of those first 20 ICFs. And that lets them know like, all right, this isn't, we're not signing our lives away for 24 months of enrollment if that's how long it's supposed to be. This is kind of a test drive. And if they suck, we can say, see you later.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that too, because I've seen lately and across a few studies we do where there's just like a switch in the, patient recruitment vendor mid-study, which always is like, kind of interesting to me. Like, are there typical like expectation breakdowns or things like misalignments that with sponsors that you see happen like on a regular basis? Is it do sponsors have unrealistic expectations? Sort of curious. I've seen that more recently than I've ever seen. I mean, across again, or maybe
there's more vendors than there ever have been.
I mean, that's true, but maybe half a dozen studies were like mid or a few weeks in, even they're like, oh, psych, we're using this one. I think I had one that used 3 like back to back to back, and I was just like, what? Why? What's going on?
I have my suspicions, and then I have what I can like say out loud, I guess. I think some of that could be like someone at a sponsor is just really gullible, and like they keep getting sold a bag of magic beans, and then it doesn't work, and then someone else comes along and offers a bigger bag of magic beans. But I think more likely what's going on is anyone can put out a good case study, right? You just need one successful trial and you can have a case study that looks amazing. And we don't know what the rest of your history is like, but if that's RTA and you did it, 8 months ago, then gosh, like you seem like a really amazing pick. But we know that like protocols and patient populations are diverse enough that treating them as equal is kind of a losing proposition. So what I see happen, like we've come in as a rescue provider a couple of times, and usually it's an inability to generate interest. So they, for whatever reason, their messaging or their ability to find the right patient and get them to click through and submit their information is bad. It could be technical. I've seen people with landing pages that were so bad they just couldn't be filled out by, like, you got there and you were like, I don't want to look at this, X out. And so it was just a technical implementation problem. The other piece is like drop off. So the internet is so big, like you can find people by putting ads online really quickly. The issue is, like, let's say we need to recruit over 8 months, 12 months, 24 months. A lot of these companies that are like, we're digital recruitment provider, are really just Facebook advertisers, which is fine. It is an incredibly powerful platform and you can probably find most of what you need on Facebook. However, if you can't, and you don't have the ability to pivot, or if you rolled into the study with 5 images and now you've reached saturation. So these platforms track like how many times people see an ad. And once you get above 4, it becomes really, really expensive, and it's not linear, it's like logarithmic. So you could go from $1 per click to like $9 per click in a week, which, if I'm not a business major, but like anytime you 9x your cost, it's going to be problematic. And so instead of just losing hundreds of thousands of dollars, these companies will just turn off the ads. And they're like, oh, we used up the internet. Sorry. They didn't. They just didn't think of how to build a campaign for longevity. So to like put a point on that, I think the reason you're seeing like changeover is that someone isn't delivering on some element of the funnel. Either the ones I see most frequently are top of funnel, like they just can't generate the interest, or mid funnel, like they're not able to whittle down or operationalize that interest, or they just want good for a second and they drop off.
And I think that kind of dovetails perfectly into my next question, which was like, which is really the bigger problem? Is it finding patients, or is it the site's capacity to onboard and see these patients? Like, in your opinion? I mean, I feel like we run ads, like we've experimented with doing it ourselves, having somebody do it for us, all types of different things. And to your point, like, put an ad out there, people are going to respond to it generally. Now, quality of those leads can vary wildly. And we're small. We really have one person who's doing a lot of those calls like by themselves. And even then, can find sometimes moderate and more, level of success doing it. So really, like, I wonder where the bigger problem is. Is it finding the patients, or is it really the site's abilities to do anything with these patients?
Yeah, it's the latter. Like the top of the funnel is the absolute easiest part of all of this. We didn't understand that. Like when we started the company, we were just like looking at the ads, because you can go behind the scenes in Facebook's ad manager and just see what ads are being run. And
See
we're like,
who's running ads. Yeah,
these are all like very bad. I think that we could do better than this. And if we could just generate more volume, sites would love us, because clinical research recruitment is slow. Like, we've all read the statistic. And so we kind of started the company. It was like week 2 when we found out, like, oh no, like it's not generating a lot of interest. That's the problem. It's turning that into patients who are showing up to sites. So first 2 weeks, we were just all about just smashing the top of the funnel. And then since that time, we've been trying to figure out the middle and the bottom. And I think it is almost always in a situation where there's a centralized provider, it is their job to set the sites up for success, not the other way around.
No.
And if you're not doing that, then I would expect you to be replaced. I would expect the sites to be annoyed. I would expect poor outcomes. They like second touch screenings and med record review and like concierge, like all that stuff should be table stakes. And if it's not, you're asking too much of the sites. Like that's not really their job.
Well, I mean, like, as a counterpoint though, is that not maybe, to me, that's like a great thing, because I can run almost any shitty ad, not that I want to, and I'm going to get leads. And as long as I can operationalize the things that I know how to do at the site level, maybe the part that maybe originally seemed overwhelming and like difficult, placing ads, doing all the technical, building something. And I mean, Canva is out there. You can build anything like nowadays with a very rudimentary understanding of computers. We do recruitment with computers. That's my new tagline. So like in some ways, shouldn't that be somewhat promising to sites? Like if you can, invest a little bit in building that middle to bottom funnel, I don't know the right phrase to use here, but like, shouldn't that be a great opportunity for you?
So I don't want to stroke your ego here too much because you certainly don't need it. But I think the concept thing is a lot of sites aren't gonna. Like their sites, like they could they? But like that's not their focus. Like they're not doing that initiative. They're not taking that business side of things.
Your focus is enrolling patients.
I'm not saying it shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be anything that leads you to enroll patients more effectively be the thing that you do?
I mean, in theory, yes, but I don't know. I didn't see that play out. I did not see sites taking the initiative. A lot of sites, certainly some do, but I did not see a lot of sites taking the initiative to do that. I mean, Steve, are you seeing what are you seeing?
I mean, I see it like anecdotally in my own life. I keep my Facebook account active almost exclusively to see clinical trial ads, and it is full of it. So like there's a lot. I think CNS Healthcare here in Orlando, and they have some sites around the East Coast, I think, as well. But they are constantly in my feed, and with ads that vary from like fine to really good. And I think more and more people are realizing that the barrier to entry is lower than they thought. Where I'll say there's still probably room or a bridge too far. Like I think asking someone at the site level to figure out how to run Facebook ads, and then take the menagerie of people who respond and figure out how many of them are worth talking to. That middle piece is a pretty high burden. Like you could have a full-time call center person who's just calling internet responders, and that job doesn't feel great. I do think that's one where AI is probably coming for that job and maybe is here already. The other bit is like, okay, let's say we live in a smaller area or we're in a highly competitive area, and like our Facebook ad costs are going to be pretty high because there's 4 other sites in town running ads against these same patients. Now you're asking, can you go to TikTok? Can you go to YouTube? Can you go to Nextdoor and Snapchat and Reddit and Pinterest? And do you have the effective like PhD in marketing that you need to cross platforms like that? And that's where I think the answer is probably no for sites. And then the other thing, to tie it back to what you were saying, Denali, about AMCs, like they're never doing this ever. So at the very least, if we're going to help connect patients to those sites using ads, like it's probably going to be a centralized effort.
Yeah, that's what I think. And I agree with you. And this is where we're trying to go right now is great. We can run ads. Well, we can have a partner run ads, whatever. It doesn't matter. Ads can be run. It seems easier than maybe I originally thought to build a top of funnel. Great. You know what? Put out an ad. There's 1,000 patients responded in 3 months. Now, what do you do with those? And to your point, if you got one person making phone calls, you don't want them making 1,000 phone calls because, and I'm going to make this up, and Steve, you probably have a better sense of this, but half are never going to respond. period, like no matter what. And then 40% are never going to respond. Okay, fair enough. I guess this is just off the top of my head. But even if that's the case, you've saved somebody a crap load of time in dealing with people that are never going to ever have another interaction with you whatsoever. If you can use this AI to text out and pre-screen, you're probably going to lose another whatever percentage of people that you're saving. And look, we want those people. We still want to engage with those people. They're people in our community. We got to figure out something there. But again, you're saving a significant amount of time. But by the time you get that 1,000 down, maybe you're only talking to, let's see, you lose 40%. So you got 600, you lose another, what? I don't know, 20 to 40% in people who don't qualify on a pre-screen. So now you're only talking to 200 people or 300 people instead of 1,000.
And your example was 3 months, which is bite-sized enough. I think Luke Snedeker from West Clinical, I tag him on Facebook or in LinkedIn all the time. They've like gotten innovation awards, blah, blah, blah. But I think he has a pretty robust understanding of the economic impact of really learning how to fine tune an advertising funnel. And it's, I think he would say, easier than what a lot of people's perception is. And I think that's probably the number one economic lever a site could pull is just, I mean, that's your main source of revenue is patients. So if you can find more patients at a really high ROI by advertising, like you should do that. And yeah, there's no qualification, no cap, as the kids would say.
Please don't say that. All right. Well, we're getting up to the end here. I mean, what do you see coming over the next, I don't know, 5 years in patient recruitment? You think it's going to be more of the same? You think we're going to sort of ride this AI bubble until it, inevitably bursts to some degree, and then we end up with maybe a smaller but better sort of stable of patient recruitment companies, or something new come along altogether? Or what do you? If you had to
go back to that, like, all right, if AI is, let's just assume it becomes cheap enough that it can be turned on like water or electricity. And let's assume that it can become agentic enough without screwing up that we could turn it on across the funnel. I would imagine a situation where there's a couple of providers doing the human bits, but largely you could probably just take a protocol, feed it into something, generate an IRB ready approved packet. It would put those ads on respective platforms, manage those ads. So like, where are we allocating budget? Where are we turning budget to zero? Report back, and then, probably interact with the patients. I know a lot of people talk about human in the loop, and there probably would need to be some stopgaps. But I think 5 years from now, if the pace of development continues and we can figure out how to make compute cheap enough, I don't think that's unrealistic. Do you think 5 years from now, people will be on their phones less, or will be interacting with digital technology less, will be in front of advertising less? If that's the case, then advertising maybe goes away. But as long as we're all using these free platforms where we're the product because ads are being run, it's going to be easy to get in front of people with messaging about clinical trials. And then the question is just, is that messaging good enough for them to give you the time of day? And I think, again, like AI could probably solve that. This is like maybe not making a great case for our company existing, but that's I think like the zero friction AI version of all this. Even if we take that out, I think there's probably got to be some consolidation. I mean, how many companies can run ads on the internet? Like, somebody will bring something to the table that's proprietary, like technology wise or process or system, and it's going to make them a better choice than their peers. I know that when we started One in Health, it was because one of the slides in our pitch deck was patient recruitment companies have been around for 25 years and no one had more than 5% of the market, which generally means no one's figured it out. That probably gets solved to some degree. But as long as people are looking at ads, there's going to be folks that you don't already know in Oklahoma City, and ads are the best way to get in front of them at scale. There's sure going to be room for going to the health fairs and setting up the folding tables and things like that, but it's so deeply unscalable. And I think the reticence that people imagine is less pervasive than I think some of the narratives. I'll say that.
Fair. No, I think it's well said. All right, man. Well, where can people find you online to argue with you over your opinions?
If those opinions are related to clinical research, LinkedIn. If those opinions are related to Pokemon, the trading card game, Twitter or X.
I have so many questions. I wish we brought this up earlier.
Not a chance.
There's always next time. I think.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, no, of course. And always a pleasure. I'm sure we'll have you back before long. Denali, what do we got later this week?
We just got a sticky notes on Thursday.
Yeah, we had a reschedule for our Thursday guest. So we'll be doing another sticky notes and talking about things nobody cares about. Thank you guys. And be back next week. Steve, thanks again.
Sure.
Thanks for listening to Note to File. We're committed to continuing to bring you independent and unfiltered coverage of the clinical trial industry.
We want to talk about what you want to hear. So if you have something on your mind, hit us up at notetofilepodcast.com.